From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training Podcast. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this episode, and my name is Bill. Who's hosting?
I'm Vicki.
I'm Jennifer.
And I'm not. Anyway, we have a guest this weekend. This weekday. It's not a weekend, it's one day. We have a guest. He represents Apex Pro in just about every video format I've ever seen. He's definitely not shy about being on that. He is a racer. He is involved with the Apex Pro team. I don't know to what extent. We'll get into that in the podcast. We didn't want to burn pod early. We have Andrew Rains. Welcome to the podcast, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to join everybody here. Thanks.
Excellent.
Well, welcome.
So after cyber stalking somebody from Apex Pro forever, I saw a webinar, and Andrew said, "Hey, if anybody's got any questions, type them in the thing." And I said, "Well, this is not pertinent to what you're talking about. Do you want to come on the podcast?" And he said, "Sure." And I said, "Another person with bad choices, but that's okay." We said yes. So that was an excellent webinar. And the one thing that was really, really cool that you showed was the ability to, I'll get into it later. I'm going to stealing pod. So Andrew, one of the weaknesses of this podcast is me, the host. I'm horrible at intros. It just happens. There's nothing I can do about it.
That's okay.
Just in case anybody is not familiar with you, did you want to get into any professional, personal racing life history?
I think you covered it pretty well. My life is racing and Apex Pro. So
Okay.
I've been my entire adult life has been invested in this motorsports world, and I absolutely love it. And I just love helping people have revelations about how to be better drivers and how to drive the car at the limit. That's my shtick.
So how did you get into racing?
I always wanted to be in it. Probably the same story as most of us. I grew up, so I live in Birmingham, Alabama, and there's a track here called Barber Motorsports Park that's fairly well known on the global scale. And it was actually a few miles from my parents' house when they built it. And my dad was always a car guy. Grew up with the only local group that really did anything 30 years ago was the Porsche Club group. And so he always had 944s when they first depreciated. He was a 944 guy, so he was always doing Porsche Club stuff. So he kind of rubbed off on me, and eventually the story that, as it relates to people that are just getting into the sport, actually the guy I sat next to in my home ec class had an autocross car. He had a Civic that he took to autocross, and when I was 17, he invited me to share it with him. So that started the whole thing. And then I did motorsports at Formula SAE in college, worked on a couple of professional race teams, ended up running and operating my own race team and probably World Challenge at the time, and ended up doing a lot of driving, worked for Porsche coaching, and then it all spiraled out of control from there.
Spiral.
Yeah, the death spiral into motorsports that I wouldn't trade for anything.
Isn't that how it usually happens?
Seems to.
Just try it out, and then you're like, oh man.
Yeah.
How deep is this hole?
How deep is the hole? Exactly. We're still trying to figure it out.
Yep. It keeps going. Yep.
Yeah.
It definitely seems to.
So, what cars do you race personally?
I've raced a lot of stuff. I started out with a Alfa Romeo GTV 2000, a 1974 GTV. It was very rusty. But it was really cool. It was very cheap, and it came with a trailer, and it came with a second Alpha. And so my dad and I bought it, and then I ended up working for the shop that sold it to me, and kind of bartered my time working there for very little pay for them to help me prep it and take it to the racetrack. So that was the first car, and then ended up trading that somehow for a late model stock car.
Wow.
and spent a lot of time driving the road course late model car, which was an absolute blast. And it's actually right here on the wall. I know podcast listeners can't see it, but there's a picture of the stock car right here.
Okay.
And then I went to college and I ended up with racing the little Formula SAE car, which is a student built open wheel car. So I spent a lot of time in the sport bike powered open wheel cars and learned kind of the basics of chassis development and race car design and the kind of fundamentals of how to get a car around the track. And then I went pro racing and raced mostly front wheel drive touring cars there. So I did Volkswagen GTI, Honda Accord, Honda Civic SI, and then a whole host of stuff. The past 3 or 4 years have been a blur with coaching clients and endurance racing. I've driven Porsches and E36 BMWs, E46 BMWs, a little bit of everything recently.
So does 2 Alphas add up to one working car or no?
In my case, it did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mia,
Got the
I
special
want
one.
you to eat, please.
Vicky thinks she's on mute.
No. I'm talking to Mia.
We know. Anyway.
Oh. Shoot.
We're also
So
doing a
sorry.
podcast.
So sorry. Okay, rewind that part up and do that again. I really thought I was
He's
muted.
having a hard time separating mom from podcast.
Sorry. I'm going to
Tough
mute
division.
now.
You know that's staying in the podcast 100%. Anyway. So who do you usually race with? I know we were talking before we started recording. You just got done with a race with Grid Life down in NOLA, but is there like a usual cast of clowns that you tend to go out on the track with? And
yeah, there kind of is. So I own part of the E36 M3 with 3 other guys who live in my area, who are all big BMW guys. One of whom I work with at the Porsche track experience at Barber. And so I got hooked up with them by going and doing a champ car race with them years ago when we were just getting Apex Pro started. They were kind enough to let me drive for the weekend. And then I ended up buying into the car because I go to a lot of events and I wanted the flexibility of being able to take my own race car.
Mhm.
So it's a WRL World Racing League car, but it happens that it also is a Grid Life GLTC, very close to that spec. So we went and ran the Grid Life Touring Cup event in that car. So in that car, I just took myself and a mechanic, a close friend of mine who's a really sharp technician. And so that was kind of solo. But most of the time I spend at the track now is either teaching a classroom for Apex Pro and teaching data fundamentals, or it's coaching a client in either World Racing League or Champ Car or various other series. So now I'm coaching a lot of guys driving like factory built race cars like BMW M240s and Porsche Cayman GT4 Club Sports and stuff like that.
Now, was it because that you just grew up in racing, or did you just HPD your way up, or you just level up in racing?
So I started,
your education level to get there.
Great question. Something that I probably take for granted is the fact that I started with the local Porsche club. I think it was the first group I did a HPDE with. I didn't do any karting growing up. There's really no kart tracks here. And my dad was into the sport, but not really active when I was growing up. So I didn't really have like I didn't get involved really young. I kind of got interested in high school. And then when I went to Auburn University, that's more known for football than anything else. But they have a very strong engineering school. And I actually was a business student, but I started doing the Formula SAE program, which is a collegiate design competition for an open wheel race car. Mm-hmm. And like a lot of other young people, that was really the kind of the formative introduction to what motorsports is, because they you can get recruited and hired by racing teams out of Formula SAE. And so that was really where I learned got exposed to the things that a lot of people that don't get exposed to, who just do HPDs and aspire to go racing, is I got exposed to the technical inner workings of the race car and the physics of the tire and the chassis kinematics and how to design the race car for the driver and the ergonomics and all the stuff that goes into that. I got exposed to that when I was 18, 19 years old and was fascinated by it.
3 years ago?
That's right. Yeah. Last year. No. But,
it sounds like we should go on your podcast.
Maybe I've always toyed with the idea of starting one, but folks like yourself do so much better job than I would. So
You obviously don't listen. So, okay.
Oh,
So actually, right before you came on, we were talking about our upcoming race season and trying to figure out what we were going to do. So what does yours look like? Provided that, things kind of get a little bit better with, the whole worldwide pandemic and all.
yeah, that little thing that's affected all of us, huh?
Little nagging thing in our side.
Right.
What are you talking about?
It's hard to have a conversation.
never been so distanced yet connected in my life.
Right. Exactly. No, it's funny because the 3 or 4 months that I didn't go to the track this year, which was like March to June. I think the first track event I went back to, heavily socially distanced and everything, was in June, and that's the longest time that I've been away from the racetrack in almost a decade.
Wow.
So that was really strange and good in a lot of ways. But so next year I've got a bunch of commitments for coaching events. So I'll be doing a lot of the World Racing League WRL events, and I've already got a client that's coming up to Barber in January, and then NASA Great Lakes. I know you guys have run with them before.
Yep.
I'm really close with Eric Meyer that runs their HPDE program, and we've got some big plans for developing an instructor training program that takes Apex Pro and basically provides a framework for using the product to train your student. And so we're working really closely on that. So I'll probably make it to one of their events. But I got married about a little over a year ago and bought a house a few months ago. So my wife's trying to keep me at home more often, but I like being at the track.
Sometimes it's good to get away. Like 1 week a
Absolutely.
month is about,
Yeah.
keep things sane at home.
Yeah.
I figure if I'm away anything at least that long, Vicki might miss me. So I might get out of the bathtub when I do something wrong. So
She might miss you.
maybe. TBD.
So Andrew, do you have a racing philosophy? I mean, we've heard quite a few colorful ones on here. Some that are really interesting, but yeah.
Keeps you
Just,
going.
Yeah.
A way that I view the racing world, or why I do it, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
kinda
some people it's as simple as, I'm going to do it till it's not fun anymore. Some people are, have one that's like goes pretty in depth, but
yeah, I think I'm more in depth than that because it's transcended the fun. Fun is no longer why I do it. I mean, it kind of goes back, like, it's not as necessarily as simple as the Steve McQueen Racing His Life quote. Everything before or after is just waiting, but it's an element of that, and that the mindset that I get in when I'm in the race car is fundamentally makes me a better person outside of it, and the way that I have to think to do well on a race weekend and to perform and to meet all the challenges makes me a better person. And so I feel like in order to be the best person I can be, I have to do it because it's almost an obligation for me at this point. It's a racer's attitude, which I think is a positive attitude for how you approach life. It's whatever breaks, I'm going to fix it. And whatever setbacks we have, we're going to overcome it, because it doesn't really matter, because we're here to race and we're trying to get to the finish and we're trying to have some success. And that's just kind of how I approach life. So I really do it to, when I get frustrated when I hear people that talk about being unproductive. They're in motorsports and, I don't do anything that adds any value to the world because I'm burning fossil fuels and consuming all these things and not really adding value. And I look at it from the other perspective. It's that, well, that's an inherently challenging thing to do. We all can admit how difficult it is to be successful in racing. And I would argue that take the social impact and the environmental impact out of it, it's going to make you so much of a better person that it outweighs those. This makes us solve problems in our daily life better, in my opinion. And that's kind of why I do it.
I agree. I feel like sometimes it's a challenge for me, and it's sometimes uncomfortable for me, but I think that sometimes we have to be uncomfortable, you know what I mean, to grow, like,
yeah,
in different ways. So that's the way I look at it. Like, it's some things are just uncomfortable, but I feel good after doing it. It's kind of like when you
yeah.
Sorry, that was my dog.
He high fives herself.
Huh?
She high fives herself.
I do. Like, you know what I mean? Like you go out there and you get to a point in your life where, your day is just the same all the time. And then, nobody ever does anything different or challenges himself. And you kind of get to a point where, I think to truly experience any growth, you need to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big part of why I'm doing it. It's not that I had a lifelong dream of becoming a race car driver or anything. And it's not like I'll ever be really any good, but
Fun.
still fun.
You
fun.
had the
Yeah.
dream, you just didn't know.
Yes.
Yeah. If it pushes you to grow, then it's a good thing. I think a good friend of mine, one of my coaching clients, he did a lot of research and read a lot of articles about flow and getting into the zone, for lack of better terms. But the part when your brain shuts off and you just perform. And he basically said to improve, what research shows is you have to get outside of your comfort zone by 4%.
Yep.
You have to push your comfort zone enough that it's uncomfortable, but not too far that you put your guard up and you don't learn.
Right.
And I think that's what racing does for me, because there's never a weekend that's the same. It always presents a new challenge that you have to figure out, and it's unpredictable, and that keeps you on edge and learning.
Mm-hmm.
So our podcast is basically around helping people understand that it's easy to take the first step. You just need to know where to start. And there's a couple starting points.
Or just start.
When we first got into it, it was a lot of jargon. It was a lot of information. It was a lot of everything. And we just figured, let's see if we can simplify this a little bit for newbies. Do you have any thoughts or tips for people who are interested in just taking that first step?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I love that, because I myself am guilty of making things more complicated than they need to be when it comes to getting into motorsports. And I don't think any of us really do it intentionally, but once you're into something for a long time with any profession or any activity or any hobby, it's easy to make it more convoluted than it really is.
Yeah. We ran into that heavily when we first kind of got started. We just couldn't find an entry point. So
yeah, it can be hard. Like the first SCCA autocross I went to, I remember all of the classes and the jargon around the car prep level for each class, and that was overwhelming. So I would actually, I would suggest the networking aspect is find a mentor, find somebody that you share some similarities with, that you can reach out to, and that's willing to share their path. And I don't necessarily know the best way to do that, but certainly
it's Garage Heroes in Training at gmail.com.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're listening to this, send me an email, right? Or send y'all, reach out to. I was going through your website and pulling up your resources and looking at all, everything that you have there for people new in the sport, and that's a lot of the information that you really need access to when you first get started. I would just say it's for people to think about anything else that they've done in their life, whether it's go to high school or start a new job or any other hurdle that they've overcome. And it's a very similar process. It doesn't need to be more difficult than that, right? It's find a group, work hard to find people that help guide you along. That would be my focus if I was getting into it.
I mean, I agree. I think the one thing that we probably don't say enough is most of the people aren't going to be bothered. They're going to be actually pleased to help you, and just ask them the question, and don't think it's a dumb question, because they may think it's trivial, but if it's stopping you from getting out on the track, they want nothing more than have somebody else to go out and play with. I mean, just to ask.
Yeah. And for people that, are in our position that are introducing new people, I remind myself when I talk to newer people all the time that just because somebody asks you a question and you explain to them your understanding of that question doesn't mean they understand what you told them. Mm-hmm. So be patient with the fact that you're going to have to explain things multiple times or different ways to help them understand, because it's a difficult world, and it's dangerous in some ways. It's challenging, and some of the complication is born of those different things. And so just be patient with new people.
So Andrew, I know it's going to come as a surprise to you that we're going to talk to you about this Apex Pro. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's very cool though. So we went out. It's story time. Strap in. This could take a while. We've been out and we've been trying all kinds of different telemetry and you know the name of our team is Garage Heroes in Training, and the first two words are what we're trying to get to, and the last two words are much more appropriate. So we're trying to figure out how to get to where we'd like to be as quickly and efficiently as possible. So we've tried, I think at last count, we're on like 8 or 9 different telemetry options out there, and we still have them all, and different cars have different things. But then we stumbled upon the Apex Pro and started looking at it. Didn't know much about it initially. Then we bought 2 of them because we've had so much good luck with them, and even Vicki and Jennifer are starting to see what it's doing and use it in the car. And then I typically am the one who shows them outside the car because I'm the geeky guy who likes to dig really, really deep. So I get into the app and playing with the buttons and going to webinars by your team and everyone there and trying to figure out exactly what we could do. And I think that even Vicki and Jennifer, even though they haven't used it quite as much as I have this year, we just got it this summer. I think they'd agree that it's helped them on track.
I ran my car off because of it.
Your car, okay.
It's happened.
Let's
I've done it before too.
Let's go with this now. Her car broke and she went off the track. She just doesn't want to admit it.
Okay. So
I've done that too as
your
well.
device, and as we start going into it a little bit more, it actually clicked for me on my last track day of the year. And
The weekend,
the last weekend. And I don't think I really focused on it because I'm busy processing so much more information. That's one thing that I hadn't really wheeled around to really focus on. And I hadn't only used it like maybe one other time, but because Bill had them in his cars.
You've had them in your car about 5 times. You've only looked at it once.
Okay, so maybe I just really haven't been looking at it. Okay, for the last track day of the year, it started to make sense. Now I know what this device is doing. I have better understanding. All my inputs normally have been too complex for me because that's the stage that I'm in right now. Then I was really tickled about this device because now I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and it's helping me do what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm glad that we got a moment to talk about it so I can learn a little bit more about it.
Absolutely.
So for those not following at home for our endless babble, what exactly is the Apex Pro and
Yes.
What does it look like? And we kind of overview it a little bit, and then we'll get into it. We got about 60 questions for you, so strap in.
Sure. So the Apex Pro device in form factor is a small piece of hardware that mounts on the dash of your car, and you connect to your primarily your iOS based cell device, your phone, your iPad, and you take that in the car with you, and you log data as you drive around the track. So the device itself has internal sensors. Because we all know that on the racetrack, we're accelerating quite dramatically, right? And decelerating and cornering. And our phone sensors are not designed to capture that kind of information with any kind of accuracy. And on top of that, we want different information than purely a cell phone can give us. And without the complication necessarily of something that's thousands of dollars that's measuring everything that the car is doing sometimes. So that's kind of where Apex Pro comes into the picture. And the really fundamental element that we actually just got patented is the display that Vicki was referencing, which is an array of red and green lights on the display. And they're not showing you your lap time or how far off you are your lap time, but they're essentially showing you how close you are to the edge of the friction circle, which is the traction circle, the GG plot. That's what is a plot of your accelerations as you drive around the racetrack. So when you brake hard, that plot's -1 longitudinal G acceleration, right? When you corner, the positive 1.2 Gs, right? And our goal as the driver is to keep the car on the outside edge of that plotted circle, meaning We're rolling as much speed into the corners as we can. We're getting on the throttle as early and as hard as we can, and we're not letting off the throttle down the straightaway. And so what the Apex Pro does is it displays to you where you are on that friction circle, but it also computes the potential of what you could be doing on the friction circle. So it's not just showing you like, hey, you're accelerating at 1G. It's saying, hey, you're accelerating at this level of green lights, or it doesn't matter how many G's in real time. And then it says you could be doing what these red lights are showing you. That's the extra potential that there is. So what's novel about it is it has software, it has sensors, obviously, and then it has an algorithm that uses all your accelerations and all the different data that it gathers as you drive around the track to learn what the potential acceleration could be. So the hope is to inspire drivers through their peripheral awareness, if they can brake harder, if they can release the brake sooner, if they can trail the brake deeper, or if they can get back to the throttle sooner, all sorts of things.
So I think you had the shortest, most succinct explanation when you first started of what driving at the limit is, because sometimes that's this foreign concept to people. What is driving at the limit? What is driving at the limit? It's getting the most potential out of the car that you could, and this device helps you do that. But when we I think the one thing that we've noticed is it doesn't seem to steer you wrong, meaning it doesn't arbitrarily say, oh, this is the track, I have it in my memory, and you should be doing X. It kind of seems to take, at least I interpret it this way, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it takes what you've done and then applies it judiciously around the track, probably somewhat conservatively, because nobody wants people flying off into the wilderness, and says, hey, on a straightaway 1, you were able to do 1G, but on this straightaway you're only doing 0.7 G. So put your foot down, or alternatively on a turn. I'm assuming that it knows the track and it knows the topography in some way. On this turn, that's a 90-degree turn, you went around at 1.2 Gs. And on this 90-degree turn, there's no reason you shouldn't do 1.2 Gs. Why were you only at 0.5? It doesn't know there's a safety car. It doesn't know that there's a traffic. It doesn't know that it's a cool down lap, but it doesn't say, hey, every car should be doing 1.5 Gs. And if you're not doing 1.5 Gs, you suck.
Nailed it. Exactly. Yep. Because that's been done before, right? The idea that your peak acceleration laterally is 1.5. So you should do that everywhere. But we know as drivers that that's not true. And that's what Apex Pro does, is it modifies that. And exactly like you said, Bill, it learns what your potential is based on what you've done other places on the track where, I'm certainly more comfortable in some corners than others. And I'm at closer to the limit of the car in one corner than another. Mm-hmm. And so it can apply that information. So it's relevant. If you're faster one place, then it can help you be faster somewhere else, or it can expose that you're less comfortable or less confident. And that can be really, really helpful if you notice it in the car. And like Vicki said, you're not sitting there watching these lights on the dash while you drive. The hope is that the change of color, the red to green, catches your attention.
Movement or the blink, yeah.
And you go, I did something different that time, right? And it went to all green. What was that, right?
Or you're testing yourself on a corner and you take a quick glance over to see, hey, all green. Oh, they're all red. Right. I thought I was good, but I'm not. But yeah.
And that's what I was. That's what I was more noticing as the more comfortable that I got with the track. I didn't have to. I didn't have to focus on all the other inputs. So now I can kind of focus on the apex to see what I was doing. It comes in.
It's not.
Right. It kind of pops in. And I was like, ooh, I did something right. Let me see if I can do that again. And that's what I was focusing on. So it, in a very simplistic way, is what I like about it. It doesn't fill you with other information. It's just simple. And that's what you need.
Yeah. I think that's very important, Vicki. It's we don't need a lot of complicated information as a driver. We can only take so much when we're operating at a high level where we're physically and mentally and emotionally stressed. We only need a little encouragement.
Right.
We only need a little, someone pointing out that there's opportunity. We don't need a comprehensive dialogue on what we need to change.
Yes.
And I think Vicki and I have talked about this several times on different podcasts that, that sometimes you go out there and trying to focus on so many different things, at one time can become challenging.
And granted that we've only been in this for 3 years. So, we're still in our growth phase. And I think initially the inputs were overwhelming and we could only focus on segments of them. But now some of those are becoming second nature to where we don't need to, they're becoming more muscle memory. And now we can start branching out a little bit. And I think that was this year I was able now to give some more attention to the apex. And not have to worry about all the others. And I think that's what I liked about it was its simplicity.
Yep. It's very,
Mm-hmm.
It's subtle.
Right.
And there's no math. Some of our team doesn't want math.
I'm not a huge fan of math. I never did well in math.
So, Andrew, can you tell us a little bit about setting up the device?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like mounting it or
It takes 7 hours, right?
Yeah. It's the opposite of that, but there are devices that can take 7 hours
For sure.
But it's the whole product is designed to be simple and user friendly, and we're constantly getting better at that, because when we started this company, it was a couple of guys fresh out of college, and I've never done anything with UI or UX design, user interface design. So we're learning as we go, but it's getting better. But the device just has some adhesive on the bottom when you pull it out of the box, and you can just stick that on the dash of your car. It actually uses a dashboard adhesive called 3M VHB that's designed for leather and other dashboard materials. And you mount that somewhere on your dash. The logo on the back of it needs to be facing the direction that you're going for best sensor accuracy. And it needs to be on the dash because it has a GPS in it, and it needs to see out the windshield to get a GPS signal. Because what's pretty incredible is when the government decided they would let GPS become public. Now, average people can tap into this satellite network of almost 30 satellites flying around the sky at 1,000 miles per hour. And that's how we find our position on the planet. So this little device that's 4 inches wide can sit on your dash and find GPS satellites in the sky. So you just mount it on the dash somewhere it can see, the top of the device can see out the windshield. And then you open up your phone app and connect to it like it's a Bluetooth speaker through our app. Download the Apex Pro app on the App Store and connect to it. And the rest of the process is fairly straightforward. It will auto select the track for you. So if you're at a road course, it'll say, hey, are you at Thompson Motorsports Park? Are you at, Lime Rock? Are you at Road Atlanta? And you select yes. And then you tap the calibrate button, which it prompts you to do. It calibrates the sensor for you to make sure everything's accurate. And then all the data gets saved to your phone. So the goal is to make it as simple as possible and to make troubleshooting easy. And that's kind of fundamentally the process there. We also have a suction mount where you can stick it to the windshield so you can move it from car to car easily. And if you do any instructing or if you have an instructor ride with you, you can easily move it from a different car to capture some data. And that's the whole goal, is to make it easy to use.
What if you're like some middling podcast who's a middling endurance racing team and, aspiring to be better? If you have your Apex Pro in the car, how do you handle the multiple drivers at a pit exchange? Do you just keep it all in one big file, or is there a way for you to because I wouldn't want somebody to be shooting for the levels that I perform when they're much better than I am, or vice versa?
Yeah, that's a good example. It depends on a lot of times if I'm coaching a driver and they want to have it exposed where they need to improve and they're a competent enough driver that's not a danger, then I'll go set a lap in the car and reset the baseline for the Apex Pro to show where my potential is, which certainly shows potential for them.
Right.
So that can be fundamentally useful, in that way. But in an endurance racing environment, there's a couple different ways you can do it, and it depends on the format, of the series. If you have long pit stops, then the best thing to do is just have a phone in the mount, in a mount in the car that's powered, and just press start when you start the race. And when you come in for a pit stop, when you're changing drivers, somebody press the stop button to save the data session, and then the next driver get in and press the start button on the phone. And you can run power to the Apex Pro, and you can just start and stop the sessions so that at the end of the day, you have everybody's data. If you want to review data during the race with the Apex Pro, like you said, Bill, you guys have 2 units. What you can do in that case is you can actually calibrate both of them on the same mount in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you come in for a pit stop, the driver who probably has their phone in their pocket or tucked into the seat next to them hops out and pulls the Apex Pro off the dash. And then they have the data on their phone. The next driver is already connected to their Apex Pro, already has the session started. They hop in, they put it on the dash, they get strapped in, and they go. That's how I use it in an endurance racing format. So I can review data. I can go back and look. Well, I felt like I was all green lights in turn 7, but I know I traditionally struggled there, so I probably wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I can go look at that on pit lane and understand it. So there's those 2 different ways to approach the endurance racing with Apex Pro. But we are making some adjustments for future products that are going to have more features that are more designed for the endurance racing application. That should be helpful.
I guess the question that I always fear, and it's not a big deal when we're doing the endurance racing because we have it hardwired in, but for like HPDs, I'm always worried it's going to run out of battery because I typically don't have it hardwired into my street car, which is usually what we bring to the HPDs. How long, roughly? I know it varies by temperature and blah, blah, blah. How long do you need to have the Apex Pro on for it to start becoming a battery concern?
So it does vary, and it varies a little bit because it's a lithium battery. So temperature affects its ability to store energy. But when I bench test it, like right over here next to me, there's Apex Pro units ready for sale. And before we sell them, we have a battery indicator that's on the circuit board. So what we do is we charge them all the way up, and then we drain them, like let the battery die, because that basically calibrates the battery indicator. So it's more accurate for the customer. And that takes from a full charge to dead. They almost all take the same exact time, and it's a little over 6 hours, about 6 hours and 20 minutes. That's in an isolated scenario and room temperature conditions, right? And it hasn't been dropped yet. It hasn't been thrown across the track to another driver. So in real world conditions, you can easily expect 4 hours if it's fully charged. Now, eventually, once you use it a lot, either the battery's going to start to wear or whatever, but you can expect for probably the first 18 months that it'll last for 4 hours at least in most conditions.
So my 4 20-minute sessions in a day before I recharge at night, because I'm super critical anal about trying to do this, I'm fine.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's how it helps if you turn the power off in between sessions, because that'll save battery as well.
Yeah, we do, or we try to.
Yeah.
Can we add extra tracks if they're not already in the device?
Yeah, you can. We have a custom track feature that allows you to create both circuits and point-to-point courses. So autocrosses, hill climbs, a new track that's not, if you go to a track that's not on the list, you can fairly easily do that. You basically go to select a track and there's a little plus icon and it says, click here to add new tracks. And you can tap that and it walks you through the process. It's nice and easy.
You're killing me. You're answering 6 questions at once. We're running out of questions. Okay, we'll get more.
All right. So are you done with that section, Bill?
I guess our autocross friends are happy, so we're good.
Okay, very good. So
it's great for autocross. Yeah.
So how does it actually work?
The secret sauce.
Well, describe to them how this device works.
Like, what does blue mean, and what does green mean, and what does red mean?
Yeah. So the best answer to that question is to read our patent. So I'll have it on our website. Okay. But if you guys want me to send you an email, I can send you an email, and that explains
USPTO.gov.
Oh no, I'm not talking about the logic. I'm just talking about the overall how the device works, not the secret sauce.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that is, there's still some, right, it's a patent that covers the idea of what we're displaying and all that stuff. So the secret sauce is still limited there, but that is a good resource if you're like the type of person that wants to read a patent, which most of us aren't. But the display and what it means is the way that I think about it, and I think Bill described it very well, is that when we're on track, we achieve performance in certain places that we could apply to others. And that's the fundamental principle that it operates off of. As a learning driver, especially, but any level driver, we're going to be faster earlier in the session someplace than we are somewhere else. So that's part of it. The other part of it is it uses a 9-axis sensor, 9-axis accelerometer, an IMU, and an inertial measurement unit, which is a combination of three-axis accelerometers. So that's important because it gets acceleration measurements in 9 axes. So it's not just lateral and longitudinal acceleration, forward and back, side to side, but it gets vertical acceleration and a bunch of other accelerations sideways, different angles that we don't think about. So it actually understands, and it can filter out when the track is flat, when it's uphill, and when it's downhill. And that's very important because all of those things affect the potential of grip. They affect the potential for the tire to stick to the track. Gravity is essentially, the car's being forced into the ground harder when you're driving uphill. You have more grip, right? We all know that we have to accelerate harder driving up a hill to maintain our speed on the road, right? And we don't have to brake as hard when we come to a stop sign going up a hill. Those are all fundamental principles of how the Apex Pro works. So the IMU can actually isolate those and understand that the track is helping you or hurting you. If you're going uphill, it's helping. If you're going downhill, it's hurting because a downhill braking zone is longer than it needs to be, right? Longer than it would be on flat ground. And then obviously banking in a corner, like a NASCAR, turn has a lot of banking. And that significantly introduces a vertical load, which pushes the tire into the ground. And that impacts the tire's ability to grip. It helps it a lot. And conversely, when you're driving on an off-camber corner, we all know that on a new track, especially when we're new to this, someone will point out a track and say, hey, there's this fancy word and it's called off-camber, and you need to be aware of it early on, right? Because it can hurt you if you don't know what it means and how it affects the car. And so that means the car has less grip because the track is banked in the opposite direction. That's helpful for you. So it isolates all those things, and then it kind of extrapolates, hey, if you're fast over here and you're not over here, what's similar about those two parts of the track? Maybe you're braking on flat ground in both areas. Maybe you're accelerating uphill or downhill. But basically, it's comparing all these different places on the track with literally 10,000 accelerometer measurements a second, because think about all the vibrations that happen in the car, right? It isolates all that stuff, right? It's vibrating on the mount. The car is vibrating, the engine's vibrating, the motor mounts are vibrating, and it has to isolate all that. So
not our car. Our car is smooth.
Yeah. Smooth.
Yeah.
Must be a V12 or a straight 6.
It's proprietary.
Can't share a number of cylinders.
Yeah, no. Sorry. Well, they change drastically during the race. So
active cylinder enhancement. So that's fundamentally how it works. Is it isolates? Is the track helping you or hurting you? It isolates, and it knows that you're going to be better other places, some places than others, and then it combines all of those things to say, hey, based on what you've done other places and what the track's doing, there's this much more potential here, and that's what those red lights represent. You can use green or blue lights to represent your performance, but the red lights always represent the potential. The potential performance you could achieve.
So forgive me, I can't remember how many lights there are on the unit all the way. If they were all lit, how many?
There's 12. 12?
Okay. So if I see 8 green, no red, I'm assuming I'm doing well. This is how I'm using the machine. If I see 8 green, 4 red, I'm not doing quite so well. Likewise, if I see 8 red, no green, I'm hoping it's an outlap, an in-lap, or I'm in the pit lane or something, because that's usually really, really bad. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yep, absolutely. So there's 3 kind of feedback points, 2 that are very important when you're in the car, and that's, are there green or red lights? Are there more green or more red? All right, and so you nailed that. If I see 8 green and 4 red, then there's 4 more red lights of potential, right? Mm-hmm. If I see 8 green lights and that's it, and the 4 lights on the end are not showing anything, then that means you're at the limit for those conditions, for that corner, for that braking zone, for that situation. Okay. If you see all 12 green lights, that means that it's very likely that whatever corner you're in, however the car is accelerating, that's the peak acceleration of anywhere on the track or close to the peak.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Can I send my unit in? Because I've never seen that. And I think it's broken.
Right. Never heard that one before.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I try to be funny, but it fails. Usually it fails, just like my driving. But
Yeah,
okay.
no, that's a good one.
Okay.
So, what data do I get in the car?
So on the Apex Pro device, you just get the lights, like the grip display. And then on your phone, if you're subscribing to our in-app purchase, you can display your predicted lap time. You can display your running lap time. You can display your delta lap time, your predicted delta. And so predicted time is the time based on your position so far through your current lap. It's how what your predicted lap time is going to be. What do we think your lap time is going to be based on how far you've made it through the lap so far? And then you can also see your predicted delta, which delta is a fancy word for change, right? For difference. And so that's how different is your current predicted lap versus your best lap. So you can display all that on your phone screen if you subscribe to Lap Timer Plus. Mm-hmm. So if you use the phone and the Apex Pro, you get the full set of, I get my grip display for my driving technique and how I can improve. Should I release the brake sooner, later, accelerate harder, earlier, those types of feedback points. And then predicted lap time is important, particularly in a race or in a qualifying session or something where time matters. I want to know, am I doing better or worse than my best lap? That can be important. So those are the different in-car feedback points available from Apex Pro.
So do I have to have a phone with me?
You do if you want to record the data.
Okay.
So you'll get lights, but you won't be able to save if you don't have the phone.
Exactly. Yeah, you can run the unit in freestyle mode, which means you can see the grip modeling, the Apex Pro display, but there won't be any data saved. And the reason for that is because the form factor of the unit, you'll notice, if you buy one or if you see one, they're very small. There's no internal storage for data that's actually on the unit, and it does a couple of things. One, that can be bad because sometimes we don't want to take our phone in the car, but the plus is much bigger, and that's that being able to leverage these little computers that we all carry around in our pocket is really powerful. So the interaction between device and phone is absolutely seamless, and you get the data on your device immediately. You don't have to download it from the cloud. You don't have to send it somewhere else and then get it. You don't have to remember to grab your phone and then connect to the device and get it. You just have the data, and it's nice and simple.
So I think we've held up the device like 3 or 4 times so far. Just for the people at home, it's basically like a thick rectangular finger is the size of this device. It's really quite small, maybe 4 inches across and 1 inch square-ish.
Yep, 4 by 1 by 1, exactly.
Oh, damn. Good estimate. So, wish list from Bill. Can we have an autosave of the session so that some of our drivers who shall remain nameless who are on this podcast that aren't named Bill know to save the session as opposed to just letting it run and then turning it off or turning their phone off or something and losing the session? Just for instance,
Future
we'll call
models.
it the Bill feature. Yeah. We'll call it the Bill feature. Funny enough, it actually currently it does have an autosave feature, but it takes 5 minutes before it autosaves.
Okay.
Right. And the only caveat to that, so again, we constantly, the world that we live in with product development at Apex Pros is the simplicity and complication, right? The simpler it gets, the easier it is to use, but you can make things more powerful, but they become more complicated. So that's kind of the balance. So the only problem with using the phone to send messages to the device is that if the phone screen goes dark, the app can't communicate to the device. So it will autosave, but if you pull your phone out and you go like that, it can't tell the device to stop. So that's the problem. But if you leave your phone open like this for 5 minutes after the session, it'll save. So that might be something that
it might already be there.
What I think I'm hearing is maybe we need a user configurable setting that saves it sooner.
That would be lovely. We could call it the Vicki, and that would be.
I've been very good. I have been.
The other thing was perhaps an option, maybe a toggle to.
Oh my gosh, Bill.
Just I got the guy. I'm taking advantage of it. To start when you cross either the pit lane or the finish line, like to turn on as long as it's already, because sometimes it's forgotten.
It have you used it in the past like couple of months, 2 months maybe?
Yes, but we actually ran it pretty well at that race, so I wouldn't have noticed if you guys improved it.
Gotcha. So the auto, there's an auto start feature, but it requires the phone screen to be turned on. So if you press start, or if you don't press start, I'm sorry, if you just press the drive button and your phone screen is open, then it'll start recording at 30 miles per hour.
Oh, okay.
Automatically, but the phone has to be you have to hit the steering wheel icon.
Yep.
And then the phone screen's got to be on, because if it turns off, then we can't tell the device you can't communicate over Bluetooth. Yeah.
So we talked about how to use this at an endurance event. I think, you were quite nice when we were talking about the endurance event. I thought you should, from a business perspective, you should have said that each driver should have their own Apex Pro and take it with them during the pit race, because then you'd have 4 of them on a team as opposed to just 1 or 2. But that was very nice of you.
Yeah, that's certainly our preference. But I'm here to solve problems. So sales is sometimes those two things are in conflict with one another. But at the end of the day, you got to solve problems.
All right. So the geeky guy on the team has some questions. So I think that you guys do a really good job with your app as well as the device. But let's focus on the app for this section of making it simple enough that you can kind of scroll around and see what you need. But for those who may not be as fluent or familiar with your app, or for those who are first time data analysis people, could you kind of say what were the 2 or 3 things that they should probably look at to interpret how they're doing once they get past the, hey, green lights are good, red lights are bad part, and actually using the app?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, funny enough, we're doing a webinar week after next about how to structure your data debrief session.
So I have to get this out before that. Okay, no pressure.
Yeah, that's right. This is the scoop. So the big thing that's really no secret that we all do is look at lap time consistency, and in our case, Apex score consistency. So that's an aggregate of red lights versus green lights, right? It's the number of green lights, the higher, the more green lights you saw on that lap. And you got to, take in consideration things like traffic and other variables, but you want to understand, am I a consistent driver first and foremost? Because if you're not performing, if you're not driving in the same place, relatively, the same lap to lap, if you're braking in wildly different locations, that's the first thing that you really want to understand. And if you are, then we want to dig a little bit deeper, obviously. But if you see huge lap time variation and it's not because of traffic, and you can be honest with yourself about that, then mainly practice getting around the track in a consistent manner, and then start diving a little deeper. But the next thing that I like to look at, there's several different things, and it depends, on who the driver is. If I'm structuring the data review session, or it depends on what you're valuing.
Let's pretend you're not there.
If I'm not there,
and somebody's got their Apex Pro and they're trying to go solo mio.
The first thing I'm going to tell them is to do a debrief before they look at the data, and I think this is very important. Is to do a mental debrief, and that is visualizing what you did, reflecting on the session, and saying, where did I feel subjectively without the data least comfortable on the track? Where did I feel like I'm leaving the most on the table? Because correlating that with what the data says is a lot more powerful than either on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't do that. And I think I take for granted that I do that sometimes. So the big thing first is, without the data, do a subjective debrief, which is totally your perspective. It's completely biased, and that's fine. Just think about where you did well, where you didn't, and then go straight to that place in the data. So on the first screen in the Apex Pro app, it's a satellite image of the track. Drag the slider all the way to that point and go, okay, in this braking zone or this corner, wherever, maybe there's a big braking zone. If you go to VIR, turn 13, big back straightaway, big braking zone. It's uphill. It's so easy to brake too early. So easy. That'd be one of the first places where I go and look at, when I go to the brakes, do I see mostly red lights or mostly green lights? And make it that simple. And you can see that in the data. And that's just finding one, that's just focusing on one place. If you're looking at more of a global perspective, I would go to the speed trace image where you see speed plotted against distance. So the distance across the track and then how fast you were going at every point. And the first thing I look for is the top of the speed trace a nice point, or is it curved? And that tells you, did I slowly come off the throttle and then brake? Right? Because that would be a curve. I'm coasting. Yeah. And that's the first thing we want to fix. Or did I come off the gas and on the brake as quickly as I could? We don't want to waste any time on that transition. So if you're able to spend a little bit of time to understand the speed trace, and then you can go look at that page, speed versus distance, and you can find, is the top curvy, or does it look like the tooth on a saw, a jagged sawtooth? That would be the second thing that I would look at. Okay.
And then the equally, you want to do fast turns, slow turns, the shape again.
Absolutely.
The deceleration, acceleration, transition.
Right. The slow part of the corner, the slowest part of the corner, what we call our minimum speed, the slowest speed that you get to in the corner. In fast corners, you want the shape as you approach that corner on the speed trace to look more like the letter U, where it's rounded. And that means that you're rolling in speed, you're sustaining a high average speed through the corner. That keeps the car from being upset because we're at higher speed and we want to respect the balance of the car. And it also allows you to maintain a higher average speed, which is important because cars don't accelerate as well. Slowing down more in a fast corner to get on the throttle earlier is less beneficial because the cars don't accelerate as well from high speed. And in slow corners, you want the shape of the speed trace to look more like the letter V. So you're braking hard, you're releasing the brake all the way into the corner, right? Trailing off the brake, that term we hear called trail braking, but it's just releasing the brake as we enter the corner before the apex. And then we're on the throttle again, hopefully hard by the apex. And that produces a V shape. And if either of those two are backwards, if you have fast corners that look like V's and slow corners that look like U's, that's a big thing to work on, a really big thing.
So what is the apex score supposed to tell me?
The apex score is telling you essentially red lights versus green lights. The first 2 laps or so are usually not truthful because the device hasn't learned a lot at that point. So what I like to look at is find my fastest lap and see what the apex score is, and then find a lap that wasn't as fast and see if I had a higher apex score. And if I did, then I would look closer at that lap, because that lap may have just been impeded by traffic or something that allowed the apex score to still stay high. So it might actually have been a better lap. So a lot of times what I learned from apex score is what other laps should I analyze that are not my fastest lap.
I never thought about that. Okay. Because that explains a couple of my data system sets on, I noticed that a lot when I was at Mid-Ohio. It would happen.
So, I'm not sure if we've already discussed this, but can this data be uploaded into something larger, or is it just basically stays on the phone?
You can see it on an iPad, or if you want to view it in a different format, you can see it on a desktop app called Track Attack.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a totally different user experience than our app, but it's a much larger screen.
I just wasn't sure if it was something that would expand on what's on the phone.
Yeah, it will expand. If you send it to the iPad, our iPad app.
Not visually, just information.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can pinch and manipulate and move things around and expand it. Yeah, you can.
He's never been allowed to touch the phone. I touch the phone and say, "This is what you should see."
The data engineer.
It's training wheels at this point. We're getting there though.
Right. So how can we most easily compare our combined sessions and our driver's data?
So any data from the same track is easily comparable. Just open up, your session, and if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the list of laps, there's a button that says add another session, and then you can pick another driver's data to compare. That's the simplest way. Another thing that helps with that as well is going into open the session, and swipe right over the session and edit the notes and make it very easy to tell that that's a session you want to look at. So maybe, if you let somebody borrow your phone and that session still has your name on it, you might want to change it to the other driver's name, or you might want to erase something in the title and name it compare session or something like that to make it easier to know to compare it. But yeah, you just swipe down the lap list and there's another button for an option to add more data.
So on the notes, I think there's 5 or 6 different pre-configured note types, driver, car, condition of the track, comments, I think something. There might be one more.
Yeah, weather and setup.
Weather, yeah, okay. So I use driver, car, and then weather just as they are, and then I use the next one, whatever it is, to do the tires or anything that I may be tweaking. Is there a way to compare, same track, same driver, same type of day, different tires, and not having to know which one it is? Or it's a wish list, not a you really should have this. Like, should I compare my Azenas to my Hancooks, or what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, but there is not a way to do that. But that's a good question.
We finally had a good question, guys.
Yeah, I think they've all been good questions.
155 episodes, we got one.
Nailed it. That's fun.
We can retire now. We're good.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but that's a great idea. That should be easier. Yeah, you're right. Because that's important information. Or maybe you make a setup change and you want to compare the baseline versus the
PSI.
Change.
Like if I'm doing a tire temp or tire pressure, 32 versus 34 versus 33 versus.
Right. I'll think about that. So the what's really interesting when it comes to product feedback and app feedback is obviously we're very open to it and want to hear it because it helps. But the most helpful thing that customers can possibly do is to draw a picture of what they want or what they think the app should display.
Well, you don't want me to draw a picture.
Yeah, I believe you're an artist.
No, those two. My circles have sides. I mean, no.
Yeah.
No, not even close.
Bill can draw Fred Flintstone. That's about it.
I had a customer this past weekend draw he wanted us to display the friction circle differently, and he made a PowerPoint slide that illustrated it, and he sent it to me and and I was like, that helps. That's huge.
Isn't it great though that you have people offering input of stuff that you can expand on?
It's incredible
on your product, as your product grows. I mean, that's
really been and I think it's our future as well. Being able to, because feedback's hard because you can't change something and this isn't spurred on by this conversation. This is a conversation I have a lot, but if one person says, hey, I want this, you can't just go do it because you really need to know if 100 people want it for it to be effective.
Right.
So what I tend to do, like when Bill, says, hey, I want to make it easier to compare this and this tire and this tire, that to me that's kind of an obvious thing, but I'll go ask more people that. I'll write it down. I'll put it into our feedback documentation. I'll start asking people and figure out, not only how we could do it, but make sure it's something that people want. And that's a pretty important, those two things are pretty important, but it has been pretty amazing how many people, like right now I have a customer that's literally programming stuff and developing software on their own for free because they want to help us be able to do new stuff in the app.
That's awesome.
And they reach out to me and say, let's schedule time to talk. I know how to do this now. And that blows my mind that people are that generous. And so it just makes me reflect on
they want you to succeed.
It's great. It's humbling. It's very cool.
Okay. So I've got, for those of you who've listened to more than one podcast, Bill is overthinking again. So we've got this thing called a friction circle, right? And most cars can brake much harder than they can accelerate. And most cars corner somewhere in between, perhaps maybe closer to braking than accelerating. So inherently, it's a squashed egg. Now, Bill proposes that you take the max acceleration and normalize it, and then you normalize your max deceleration, normalize it. So if you accelerate at 1G, it's easy. You divide all your rough data by 1. And if you decelerate at 1.5 Gs, you divide everything by 1.5. And if you left and right at 1.2, normalized by dividing by 2, then it would really be a circle, not a squashed egg. And you could actually see as a percentage what your acceleration relative to max would be and what your deceleration and lateral as well. I think that makes it a circle, but nobody seems to agree with me. And I'm going to keep asking this question to people until they do.
Funny enough, I was going to show you this. This is not a podcast.
This is a visual on a podcast.
This is what a customer sent me.
Yep.
So it's got reference circles on it to compare your friction circle to an actual circle. For that reason. And this was what a customer made this and sent it to me.
It's not me, just in case.
It was not Bill.
It wasn't me. Not me.
So I do understand what you're saying, and it does make sense, because it's not only is that a simpler shape to understand, but that gives you more of a reference for it gives more structure to the display of the data.
And it could be an option, right? You could have both. The thing that attracts me to it is I think I'm better turning than I am at braking. And if we unitize this and made it a unit circle, I would be able to see, like, hey, my braking's only at a 90%, but my turning's up at 95%, or vice versa. I could be totally wrong. I know it's hard to imagine, Vicki, that I could be wrong, but I think it would quantify relative, like, I'm assuming I'm better at acceleration than I am at turning, and I'm better at turning than I am at braking, but I may be absolutely wrong, and I'm working on braking so hard, and it could be less valuable to me than if I worked on my turning. I don't know.
I think I understand.
Oh,
let's see what this next update on the friction circle yields, and let me know if it's close to what you're looking for.
Okay, I will. Well,
yeah.
I'm not shy. I'll hound you forever to get you to come on the podcast.
I don't mind. Yeah, I really don't. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, please reach out to me. Like, the day people stop reaching out to me, I'm an extrovert. I like talking.
That's awesome.
This COVID virus must be killing you.
Yeah, it's not been easy. It hasn't. That's why I've been really thankful that the tracks have been open, and I've been able to wear a mask and be outside and see people, because this would have been a really tough year.
Mm-hmm.
Jen,
where are we at? Oh, Jen, you're up.
What is crew view, and why does Bill think it's cool?
Sorry, I've been pushing crew view on these people, and they're like, what?
Yeah, crew view is probably one of our unsung, in my opinion, one of something we need to talk more about. But it's a live streaming feature where you can watch other users on track. So from anywhere in the world with a cellular connection, you can see other drivers. That there's a toggle in your user profile if you don't want to display your speed and position, but people can see where you are on the track, how fast you're going, and what your lap times are on crew view. And then after the fact, when you save your data, you can submit your data to compare to other users through that same kind of social system. So you can see who else is driving quickly and compare lap times and data with other people. And we've only really scratched the surface. We're a very small group. It's myself, and then depending on the day, up to 5 other people. But really, it's about the effort of 3 full-time people here at Apex Pro. So we're just scratching the surface. That's one of our low-hanging fruit opportunities. And there's some stuff coming that's very, I feel like I need to point at you. Yes, sir.
It's okay. You can point at me all you want. So can I take crew view and kind of display it or monitor it in the pit while somebody else on our team is out on the track?
Absolutely.
On like a display. I'm thinking have a display with like an Apple TV, and I just sling it to it. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. As long as the device that you're connected to has a cellular connection, and the device in the car does as well, or Wi-Fi connection.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so not at CMP, but most of the other tracks we go to.
Yeah,
okay.
Anywhere else.
Okay, very well. Okay.
Well, what do the star settings mean?
The skill level settings.
Yes.
Yeah, that is to just the resolution of the display itself.
The lights.
Another thing, the lights. That's another thing we don't really focus on enough. But The 2-star setting is kind of the most standard. The 3-star setting essentially is like taking a magnifying glass and zooming in on the Apex Pro LEDs. It makes it a tougher critic. You're going to see more red lights with 3 stars.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got the whole reason you're on this podcast is this question, Andrew. The rest of it doesn't matter. I want to know when I'm looking at my overview of the track and I look at my colors with my Apex score, why are my straightaways always red?
Because the unit does not model engine power. That's a kind of technical answer.
So it's not me.
So we don't have to really worry about that part.
Right. Currently. There are.
So when you're yelling at me, Bill, saying it's red, you need to try harder. It's
I
not
never
working.
yell at you, Vicki. I'm cheering you on.
All right. Supportive. Yeah. So that's actually, I have a whole video about that. So currently the way the logic in the unit works is that when it sees you not accelerating at peak anymore, the lights start to fall away from you achieving your maximum acceleration. To now you're nowhere near your maximum acceleration, but it doesn't understand you upshifted from 3rd to 4th, and now the engine's.
I've got all my hamsters going, man. I'm doing what I can.
Right.
That's all I got.
Foot is on the floor. Give me a break here, right?
Exactly.
So we're actively adapting that, because that's been a big. It's not intuitive, and that's probably the only thing I don't like about the display personally. And a lot of people have told us that from the beginning, and unfortunately, until now, we haven't been able to do anything about it, because it's a pretty fundamental, thing. But it does make sense when you think about it from the physics standpoint of the real reason is that it doesn't model the engine's torque, it doesn't model the upshift
capability, right?
Yeah, but it does model the aerodynamics of the car and all the other accelerations. So it's basically just adding a little more sophistication to the algorithm.
Yeah, it took me a little bit because, the first input of me is look at the thing and fix what's red, right? So
right.
I'm looking at it, I'm like, I can't go faster on my straightaway. So I was a little confused.
I'm on the gas.
So yeah,
we're adjusting that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're fixing that for the future. Yeah.
So I'm probably the one who should ask. So when we have this nice little cute device, it's very small and does so much, but we tend to be a more kind of society, and I think it also offers the option to put in external inputs so we can get even more data through this. Or was I asleep and thinking about my red straightaways?
No, you can add if you have an OBD2 port on your car, you can actually add our OBD2 module and gather data from the car.
Okay. And is there a chance to do so that would give you the standard car OBD2 type data, which depending on the car, it can give you a lot of things, throttle position, engine RPM, things like that.
Yep.
Any option for external sensors that aren't OBD2?
Currently, there's not with our current product. But yeah, OBD2 opens up an entire new world of being able to analyze throttle application, being able to do a gear calculation, so you can see, black or white, what gear am I in and which one's better, and answer some of those questions, and also vehicle health measures like coolant temperature and MAF airflow.
Would that go through? Would that go through the crew view as well, or no?
Currently, no, it doesn't go through. Right now, crew view is just the speed and position.
Speed and position. Okay.
But stay tuned for updates in 2021 on that.
I heard you knew a guy who knows about this stuff, so that was.
I know a guy that's much smarter than I am that knows software. Yeah.
Cool.
When it comes to cross data analysis, how best can we use this device or integrate it with other systems?
That's a good question. So as far as using it with another data device that does other stuff differently.
Or like with video integration, like if you just kind of want to compile something.
She wants to look cool on YouTube. She wants to see the cool stuff, the little track map, and the.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah. We've seen people kind of integrate a couple things, like with a GoPro and with the data. Will yours fit into that? integration?
Absolutely. Our latest update for the Lap Timer Plus subscription that we have, which is an in-app purchase, allows you to overlay your video from your phone. So if you record track video with your iPhone and the Apex Pro data really seamlessly. So you can literally record the data and press 2 buttons to render the video and the data together. And then you can see the track position, you can see your speed, you can see the Apex Pro lights, all overlaid on that video without you really having to put any effort into it. You can also take that same export of the data that you can use for Track Attack, and you can put it in, a number of different third-party video rendering services. But the one most people use is by Race Render. And it basically, you take it in there and you plop in this CSV file, and you can add your GoPro video, you can add your iPhone video, you can add your whatever video, and you can integrate it. And people like doing that because it's a lot more affordable than buying one of the high-end camera systems that integrates it all for you. Because those are prohibitively expensive for some of us, and that's more of a nicety in a lot of ways. So we're proud of our video integration feature. We've made some adjustments to the camera settings on the phone to help improve it. We've got other plans for more video in the future. But there is some cross-system integration there. We're certainly not an open source focused product because this is we're not, we do this as a for-profit business to fund our lives. But at the same time, there's an element of we want to offer our users the flexibility to use the product the way they want to use it. So we try to tread that balance.
So there's this guy I know, and he's got this Excel spreadsheet that he's putting together, and it's got all the different, I'll raise my hand. How you doing? It's got all the different telemetry systems that we have and we've tried, and several that we wish we did try, and yours is on there. And one of the things that we're trying to put an article together is like the advantages, disadvantages, pluses, minuses, and a review of each of the different ones we have. And then down towards the bottom, we have a recommended, minimum. If you're an endurance racer, you should do this. If you're a minimum for an autocross racer, first thing you should do is this. And then a second level, and then the whole enchilada, kind of the perfect system. Now, theoretically, if I would have seen this Excel spreadsheet and it said the optimum solution for an endurance racer is to have the Apex Pro on the dash and the Garmin Catalyst off to the side talking to you through your earbuds, and then a GoPro in the back window shooting so you can see all three of these and outside the track. What do you think about that as a systemic composite of the best of the systems and the data that you can get both in time, real time in the car, and external to the car when review?
I think that'd be a pretty good cross section of the different, certainly the most user friendly data offerings on the market. I like that. I love the idea of having the Apex lights in the camera. I frankly think the Garmin system's pretty good, and I wouldn't encourage someone against it by any means. It's twice as expensive as the Apex Pro, so there's a different. It's a different aspect.
That's
there.
why it was the, if you had your wish list, what would we think you should do?
But it does give you very different. They're very complementary because the Apex Pro is focused on driving the car at the limit, using all the lights, using all the grip, and the Garmin is really good at helping you identify where you need to be on the track. Do I need to be further right or left? Do I need to brake later or sooner? Do I need to apex earlier or later?
Yep.
And you need both of those things.
Because we've tried it, and that's kind of right now, that's where that sheet seems to be leading us to, is mixing and matching and taking the best of the best, and to make you happy. This is breaking news, nobody's seen this sheet except me, except the guy who wrote it. For the minimum, it's easy. Endurance racing, Apex Pro. Autocross, Apex Pro. HPD, Apex Pro. So I know a guy who should be happy about that once we do publish it.
I'm flattered. I had a customer wrote an article that compared and contrasted some different systems. So I need to send that to you so you can see his opinion as well. But I'm flattered. That's cool.
No worries. So
So
Nope, I'm
go
good.
ahead. So how best can we compare driver results?
So just speeds and lap times or specific
Okay.
things.
Across a team, if we're trying to, let's say that there's 3 people who have a podcast and they race on the same team, for instance.
So if you want to look at like all of your data together at the same time.
All of our data and try to learn, because Jennifer may be tremendous in turn 3 and Vicki may be tremendous in turn 7 and I'm intermediate and I want to beat them. We must fix this.
Highly competitive.
I am.
Yeah.
Not competitive at all. And Vicki is way better than I am. And Bill's just way better than any of us.
And wants to stay that way, but
That's right. Don't relinquish that position. Yeah. So the best way that I would recommend doing that, there are ways to look at lots of laps and lots of drivers overlaid at once, but I tend to focus on trying to only look at 2 laps at once because it's easy to lose sight of what there's a lot of resolution in what the shape of that graph is doing. Yes, so I try to focus on looking at 2 drivers at once and no more, but there are situations where 3 or 4 drivers is a good amount of data to overlay. And for that, our system only allows for 2. And the main reason is because we're all mobile based. So when you start overlaying 3 and 4 drivers, it gets to where you lose sight of what's going on. All right. You can't really learn anything. But the best way to do that is to create a free track attack account, trackattack.io, and to send your data to Track Attack. And that turns it into very similar to the AIM software in a lot of ways, a little simpler. You can look at it in the same ways you can look at some more complicated systems. So you can overlay 4, 5, 6 labs.
Yeah, we were kind of thinking about it when we were talking the last time. We were thinking about, how do we look at what each of us is doing, going into a particular turn and just compare as opposed to what we think we're doing, like at Mid-Ohio going into the keyhole, where are we braking? Where are we turning in? Where are we apexing? What's our min speed? And then, trying to see how we're coming out. Where do we come out to a certain point and who's doing what and trying to be able to talk to each other with more quantitative as opposed to, well, I brake at the 2 board, So.
Yeah, that's how I would recommend 3 drivers is doing it on Track Attack on a computer so that you have
more screen.
It's a little more of a static. I'm going to look at this for a little longer experience. Otherwise, the best way to do it at the track is to airdrop your Apex Pro data and look at 2 drivers, at once. Look at Bill and Vicki, look at Vicki and Jennifer, look at Bill and Jennifer.
Yep.
Yeah,
she's trying to confuse you by having her ID as Calvin, but that's okay.
I saw that. Yeah.
We haven't figured out why.
I don't know why it did that. My kids were messing with my email one time and they like switched it over to something Calvin Bicycle. So when it's on my, sorry.
Admit it, it's because you're a big fan of Michael J. Fox's underwear in Back to the Future and you want to be Calvin Klein.
Yep, exactly. That's right. Yep.
Okay. Hey, I gotta keep my geek cred up. So
that was left field.
What about do you have any option that I'm not aware of where you could have audio as opposed to color in case somebody is color challenged?
No, we don't have an audio option. Fortunately the Garmin system has that covered for the most part. But that's a good question because there are a lot of colorblind people out there. But no, we don't have an audio tone or
beep
something like that.
Yeah, something. So I'm not sure if I did it or if I'm confusing myself, but I think it's either one of our Apex Pros does green and red and one of them does blue and red, or is it only blue and red in the beginning? I don't really, I'm sorry, but when I'm racing on a track, I don't focus on the unit. I kind of glance at it, but is there a setting for blue or am I?
There is, yeah. On the home screen of the app, you can choose between blue and red, green and red, and some other color options.
Oh, okay.
So it means the same thing.
Oh, there's no pink. Yeah.
Oh, there's options. Pink,
Okay. So
orange.
because Vicki has
Us girl
one
racers.
link to her
No, go
phone
ahead.
and I have one link
I'm
to
just
my
teasing.
phone, I think they're set different because I was very
Yeah.
confused for a little bit. But okay, that makes
Yeah, you can just tap. It's called color, and it's right there on the home screen. If you look down closer to the bottom.
Okay. Did we miss any features or settings of note that would be pertinent to the discussion? Or
Man, I think we hit most of it. In the Lap Timer Plus subscription, something that's really cool that I use a ton personally when I'm looking at my clients' data is something called Grade. It's a data channel called GPS Grade.
yeah, I love that one.
Calculation of is the track uphill or downhill.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that all the time. It's super, super helpful. It's basically like if you took the track and you straightened it out and you cut it down the middle, what would you see? It's a cross section of uphill and downhill. And what you usually find, and I find with most drivers and even with myself, is that areas where the track compresses, where it goes downhill and then uphill again quickly, drivers don't fully take advantage of how much grip that offers them.
Mm-hmm.
So you can usually go faster in those areas. So I tend to focus on a lot of drivers that have confidence issues. I focus on those compression areas. So if you're using our subscription, the GPS Grade channel is super, super cool.
And if you're graphical, you can have the same information on the GPS map of the track.
You can absolutely. It color codes it based on the change in grade.
Yeah, I got so excited during your seminar that I think I put that on Instagram while we were in the seminar because I was like, oh my God, look at this thing. So, yeah.
So is there any way to export track notes?
From the app, like if you make the notes in the session and you export it. If you're exporting it to like a CSV file or to sharing it, I'm not sure. I don't think it exports the notes in the CSV. But it does if you share the session as an Apex Pro session. Okay. So if you send me your session, then I'll see all of your notes and everything.
Cool. Good. So we had this instance happen at the last track event we went to. We had a red flag, and then it was followed by a black flag to pit. And I happened to stop right at where the pit lap timer is in the pit lane. So instead of running like 152s, I was running like 2-second lap, followed by followed by like a 4-second lap, followed by a 7-second lap. So my lap times were a little bit off. But is there an easy way, and I believe there is, I just want to make sure we covered it during the podcast, to edit or remove laps from the system?
So there's not a way to like delete laps because all of that GPS data is tethered together. So it's actually dependent on each lap sequentially to generate what you see in the app. But there is a brand new feature, and I'm actually glad you mentioned this, Bill, because that plays right into our hands. And I'd be interested to see what it does with this data session because it might fix it. But if you go to where you go to share data, if you swipe right over the session, tap options, and then tap repair.
Okay.
And what that does, say you, like the situation you had, it might help. Say you didn't log, like you went out and it didn't trip any laps for some reason, right? You had bad GPS signal or, something happened.
I mean, one time
you can repair it.
Yeah, one time on Autobahn, I had a problem in that I think I put in north and we were running full or vice versa. And it just got all confused. But that was an operator error like it normally is.
So the repair feature will fix that now.
Good.
So I'd be interested to see if it fixes, because I haven't heard of that. I've actually never heard of that scenario before. Because I mean, what are the chances? But
not very much. But lucky me.
Yeah.
The Garmin got totally baffled. I mean, they're like, but last time you did it this lap in 2 seconds. Why aren't you doing it again? I'm like, I'm trying, but very difficult. Okay.
All the data after that was then very confusing.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, that was the one thing I've seen with the Garmin that was like it got lost on that one. So interesting. But that's okay. Very cool. Vicki, your favorite section's coming up.
Yes, this is going to be the fun part. All right.
It's been fun the whole time.
Furious Storytime questions. We get to know you just a little bit better. They're usually rapid fire, so just enjoy it. Jennifer, you want to kick us off?
Oh, what was your very first car? What was the worst car you've ever had? And what was the car from your family that sticks out in your mind? Those really 3 questions. So, first car.
Okay, my first car was a 2010
Oh,
Jeep Wrangler.
so
2008 Jeep
And
Wrangler.
Vicki
4-door.
had a rank.
Had a 2008. No, I had a Jeep Wrangler. It was a 1998, I think.
Yeah, it was a 4-door manual transmission. It was actually kind of a lemon. I had all sorts of problems with it.
Yeah, they
was-
did have.
it was a
problems.
Jeep.
That might have been the worst car I've ever owned.
What
Yeah.
did it happen to be the carburetor or the exhaust area?
No, mine was fuel injected, but it would pop out of first gear randomly.
Oh,
Okay.
that's awesome.
You'd be driving around and it would drop into neutral. And I'm like,
Yeah.
That's spectacular when trying to get away from a light.
yeah, and just the fit and finish and the everything about it was between that and then the other option for my worst vehicle is I had a tow vehicle. I had a dually Dodge 3500 that I bought and had a cracked engine block. And I didn't know
Ooh.
it. It was using oil and I had to replace the engine, and that was
Ooh.
on a vehicle, a Cummins diesel that should because someone didn't clean the air filter. And then the last one, the car that I had, my family had that sticks out.
Yep.
My dad had when I was really, really young, had a 1989 Porsche 944 Turbo. And that was like what turned me into a car guy, that car. So probably that one.
You just answered it because we were going to
You
go.
just
What's the
answered
taproot?
Bill's next question.
What's the taproot car? The one that got you into cars.
That was it.
That was it. 944 Turbo. You can blame all that money that just went whoosh from a turbo.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very well.
So what is the one thing that no one knows about you that would surprise them?
I was my high school mascot.
Ah, that's a good one.
That's a first.
What was what was the mascot?
So wait. What was the school?
Vestavia Hills is the name of the school.
So you were the
Vestavia
Vestavia Hills Andrews?
Yeah, everybody looked like me. They dressed like me at pep rallies.
That's amazing.
So what,
Yeah.
what was the mascot?
So the
Andrews.
mascot, it has since been changed. So the world that we live in now is right, kind of like the Washington football team. So I was the rebel man,
Oh, that's not good right
Confederate-
now. Yeah.
Confederate general.
Oh,
No.
Yeah.
Jennifer works in a school. Okay, guys, this is really funny. Jennifer works at a school. It's a charter school. Jennifer, you want to tell them what your mascot is?
it's a patriot. It's a eagle.
You
Oh,
said
wow.
it was a calculator.
Oh no! That
calculator.
not the one I work at. That's the one my children went to a different charter school.
That's what I meant. You work at a school.
Yeah. So my
what is the
kids
mascot?
go to a school and their mascot is a calculator. It's a science and math school.
STEM school.
It's a calculator.
Could be worse.
That's
Could be
hilarious.
a slide rule. That would be worse.
That's hilarious. Yeah. After I graduated, a few years after I graduated, they decided that it had been time enough for the old Confederate general. But of course, ignorance was bliss, and we didn't really think about that. It's just like,
Yeah.
we're rebels. So it was fun. It was really fun. I met my girlfriend. She was a cheerleader at the time, and that was fun. And I went to cheerleading nationals. It was like a really storybook senior year of high school. So
That's
awesome.
awesome.
I won't complain.
I still think it would have been better if they were the Andrews. That would have been spectacular.
I'll recommend that when they.
It's an
Maybe
option.
I'll let them. Yeah, maybe the Washington football team could be
Yeah.
the Andrews.
Maybe. I mean,
They need a mascot.
there you go.
That was funny.
So automatic stick or don't care?
Stick.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I do care. I like your titles.
I do Carrie says.
I do care.
You ever notice that the delineation is roughly around 50 years old?
Yeah.
Anybody under
Definitely.
50 is like stick. Anybody like well over 50 is like, those
I
are
like to drink my
bikes."
coffee on the way to work.
Yeah. I currently drive an automatic as a daily, but every car I've owned until this point's been a stick. So I do have that. There's just something about it. I don't know.
Engagement.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, do you have a favorite race car driver?
Oh my goodness, that's a hard one. growing up as I was pretty into NASCAR around the time it got really popular because I was growing up in the early 2000s and NASCAR was very on the wide scale, but I like every kind of racing. But I was a big Bobby Labonte fan.
E-Lab.
Yeah, he was the man because his car was green and I liked the color green when I was a kid, so I was into that. Big Schumacher fan growing up as well, and then all the like famous sports car drivers, Hurley Haywood. I've watched like guys like Andy Lally and Spencer Pumpelly since they started racing. I was always a huge fan of them. But I met Hurley Haywood and actually worked with him at Porsche.
Wow.
And I think he's just an incredible person, and the stuff that he's done in the industry. He gave me time. He let me call him when I was about 16 or 17, just getting into it, and ask him questions about what it's like to be in racing. And he gave me like 30 minutes on the phone, and I just thought that was really cool.
It is. It's awesome.
Yeah. So he's probably one of my all time favorites. But yeah, like that green Interstate Batteries number 18.
He helped me win 2 different fantasy NASCAR leagues I was in.
Really?
He did.
He was the man for quite a while.
He was.
I remember playing the NASCAR. I had all the NASCAR and Formula One and Forza and all the video games. And he was always, they used to let you on the NASCAR game. You could replay a race scenario. So they would say, hey, at this race in 2002, this driver and this driver did this, and here's how it played out in real life. And now you get to go do it in the video game. And I just remember that the 2003 or 2004 video game, Bobby Labonte was in every scenario because he was always at the front. And I was like, this guy's awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So front wheel, rear wheel, or 4-wheel drive, or does it matter?
Ooh, that's a good one. Most of all the pro racing I've ever done is in a front wheel drive car. So I have a bias and a love towards front wheel drive.
Vicki does not.
I would say it does. I'm be very unpopular here and say it does not matter and for a different reason, not necessarily. I prefer, like, from a driving dynamic standpoint, rear wheel drive's probably the most fun, but from optimizing the tire and how you drive the car, it doesn't matter as long as you're driving the tire at the limit.
Okay, good answer.
So, what is the car that got away?
Ooh.
He says,
Jeep.
ooh.
Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, the Alpha. So when I had 2 Alphas, one was a race car and one was an identical car, but it was a street car, and it had been converted to electronic fuel injection. And I daily drove it for 6 months, and it ran. It was awesome. It had no rust. It
ran for 6 months.
Alpha. It did, and then a U-joint on the drive shaft failed, and I probably should have kept that car because it would be worth a reasonable amount of money today, and it was just absolutely lovely in every sense. But ironically enough, I traded that for a car that is probably the more realistic car that got away, which was a 96 Series 1 Land Rover Discovery with a 5-speed manual.
Oh, wow.
Which most people don't even know they sold to the U.S. They only sent, like, I think it was 1,500 of them with sticks to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And the frame had no rust, had a little rust on the body. But I probably should have kept that one too, because those have appreciated like absolutely crazy in the past few years. So those 2.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Vic.
What is the fastest you've ever driven a car? I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was my turn. My bad.
It goes and then Jen, and then you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tricky.
Okay, what is the fastest you've ever driven a car? What car, where, and when?
I believe it was 182 miles per hour.
Woo!
At Daytona in a stock car.
What was it?
It was a late model stock car. This red car right here.
Okay.
How do I show you?
Wow.
Right there.
Right.
Okay. And where were you?
Daytona International Speedway.
That's a likely place for a stock car to hit a hot top speed, I guess.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
I'm sure. Okay, so this one, once we start playing this lottery thing, we're going to win, but it's going to be huge. So we're going to have an island. And on this island, it's got a racetrack. It's got a go-kart track. It's got an off-road area. And we want to make sure that all our podcast guests are treated well. So each of you is going to have 5 cars sitting there ready for you, ready to be used in whatever manner you want. But we want to make sure we have the right cars. So what 5 cars do you want on our island of car fun?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. We got to have like a really awesome rally car if we have some off-road stuff
Of
going
course.
on.
I mean, it's our island. It's got to have
Yeah.
that.
So probably like an E30 rally car, an old BMW,
Oh,
or
wow.
a
Okay.
Lancia Delta Integrale or something, 037 Lancia
Okay.
a rally car. Something, another off-road vehicle like a Bowler Nemesis or Bowler Wildcat, one of the Rover-based Bowler off-road
Mhm.
SUVs. Those things are awesome. Would absolutely take one of those. An old 911, G-body 911
Okay.
for the road course.
Mhm.
That's a got to wrap your arms around it. You know, maybe the 3.3 liter turbo 911. That's a brutal car. What else? Probably anything with a sequential shifter or straight cut gears for the road course.
Okay.
Doesn't really matter what it is. Could be a stock car, could be a GT3 Cup car.
Could be Bobby
anything that-
Labonte's car if you want.
I'll take I love the stock car. Straight cut gears are awesome. I would do that.
You got one more?
And one more. That's tough. Either a fast boat or a fast airplane, if that's an option.
Oh.
To get off, to get off that island.
He's trying to leave us.
Yeah.
He hasn't even gotten there yet.
All right, do whatever you need to do.
So
Right.
what's your dream car for a race car to start a build from?
Oh man, that's a fun
I
question.
told you these questions are great, aren't they?
These are great questions. You know, probably currently I'm in that phase of life where like the supercars and stuff like that don't have a lot of appeal to me. I just like real drivers' cars. So probably like a 997, 911 for Grid Life Touring Cup, something like that.
Nice.
Something kind of out there. Those cars are hard to drive at the limit. They still have very much a rear engine propensity. And that'd just be a really fun. They sound incredible. And they drive really nice. Something like that. Nothing exotic, nothing crazy expensive. Something fun.
Awesome.
If you can drive one vehicle or
Yeah.
race one vehicle from another decade, what decade would you choose?
Oh man, easy. IMSA GTP or Group C prototype era. Any of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. They won't ask it, so I will. Jeremy, Hammond, May, Chris, Matt, other?
Which one's my favorite?
Sure.
Oh man. I mean,
Some people
Jeremy's.
don't even know, like, who?
Yeah.
We get a lot of who's.
Jeremy's he's the biggest goober in the world, but he's so good and so hilarious and just. But probably May.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't
awesome.
think we've heard that before.
Yeah, we've heard May once or twice.
Really?
Yeah.
He's brilliant. Have you ever watched him like what's that show that he does where he just like the disassembler? He just
Yeah.
disassembles stuff.
Or the railroad one where he's playing with model railroads and stuff. So yeah.
Oh, that one where they drive to do a railroad track around the old Brooklyn circuit.
Mhm.
Is that the
Didn't he
one?
also do one where he was drinking across Britain or something like that?
Oh, that's good too. In the caravan.
That's-
Yeah, I've seen all the May stuff.
That's
He's
cool.
brilliant.
That's called Monday.
Yeah. Where would your ultimate road trip be from, to, and in what car?
It would be probably continental Europe with my wife in a convertible E-Type Jag.
Ooh.
Yeah, and probably start in Spain and end in like Prague.
Wow.
Going up and around or going across? What do you think?
Going across probably.
Okay.
Maybe a little swing by Monaco, French Riviera, back up into the Alps.
Nice. Sounds like
Yeah.
a pretty awesome trip.
I think we should
I
go.
think we should all go,
Yeah, you
right?
can come.
We'll do it on the way to the
Sounds
island.
really appealing. That
Yeah.
could be our away race.
Could be.
Prague.
There you go.
We'll put Apex Pros on the dash and we can use it as a business
There you
expense.
go.
That's right. Yeah, we'll cover it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What's your favorite car movie or car from a movie of all time?
Steve McQueen, Le Mans, favorite car movie of all time for sure.
Oh, so you go back
And,
to silent movie days.
Yeah, that's the one that, like, that movie. I mean, my dad's a big, not only is he a big car guy, but we always had the theater TV experience is very important, the sound system. So we would always crank up the volume. And so probably the Porsche 917 or the Ferrari 512, favorite movie car as well.
Can't go wrong with either one of those.
Yeah.
Mm.
12 cylinders and 240 miles an hour. Hard to beat.
You struggle through, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
So what car would you love to switch into that you were currently racing against or raced in the past against, and at what racetrack?
When my last year that I did World Challenge in pro racing, I had a Honda Accord, which had fallen out of favor. Honda was not paying for any marketing dollars in the series. They weren't a sponsor, and the BMW M240IR was really popular. And then the TCR Audi was the first TCR car to come to the US, and they balanced it to run with our class, which it was much faster. They had to run 70% throttle and like 400 pounds of ballast. And that car was on rails compared to the rest of the cars in the field. So I would have taken the TCR car against my Accord.
70% throttle and 400 pounds, and it was still
faster.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a lot.
So, what car, if any, would you want to wipe away from history?
I do not like this question. I like all cars, even crappy cars.
Yeah. Man, that's a hard one. I want to say like the Chrysler K car, but Chrysler wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that. So
it could be a specific car. Like, it doesn't have to be all of them. It could be the car that hit you in your Jeep or whatever.
Gotcha. Nothing comes to mind on that. I don't know.
All right. You're with Vicki. That's a good place to be.
I'll probably send you an email like 2 weeks from now, Bill, and be like, I know what car it
Here's
is.
the top 20.
Yeah. I don't actually know. That nothing. Every other question I've had like something come to the front of my mind.
No worries. We're wearing you down.
Bill.
What is your favorite track so far, and why?
My favorite track. It's different between favorite track to drive just purely and favorite track overall. But overall, I would say Laguna Seca is my favorite track, mainly because I did well every time I went there. That's probably why. It's a great racetrack as well. But if I had to say favorite, just like to drive in general, I think Sebring and VIR are probably the two. They're just.
Why do they stick out?
Sebring sticks out because it's hairy, it's high risk, it's fast. The surface is really challenging. There's more nuance to the camber and the elevation change than one would think. It looks flat, but it's got some pretty nuancy corners. And VIR is just the whole backcountry road, rolling hills, super high speed. It has elements of everything. Type of track.
So let's make that even worse. What's your favorite turn so far?
Oh man, my favorite turn. Turn 1 at Road Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
Might be my favorite. I don't know if anyone else has
we've
experienced that.
Vicki and I have been there. Yeah.
It's terrifying and awesome at the same time.
Just when you're done with turn 12.
That is a little bit of racing, isn't it? I think that's racing is a little bit terrifying and exciting at the same time.
Yeah, a little scary, but
just when you're done clenching from turn 12, comes turn 1 right behind it.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that racetrack.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So in your opinion, how much of racing is learned and how much is natural skill?
I think most of it's learned. I fundamentally think that. I think most of what we affiliate in general as talent, and most of what we think is talent and natural skill, and in society in general, is usually something that was a learned skill earlier in life for that person. So I really think anybody can learn it if they fundamentally are willing to do what it takes to teach themselves how to learn it, and that's harder for some than it is for others.
Right.
Some already have the advantages of experiences earlier in life that benefit them greatly, and we see that as natural talent. And granted, we don't all start from the same baseline. I also think that some of us have inclinations towards certain things, but
That's a good reason. I mean, that's a good answer. Because sometimes I think, not sometimes, I believe that when they say the natural skill part of it, that was a good point that you made about, things that you could learn your gutsiness from, early on in life. Like, you fell on a bike a couple times. Now all of a sudden you don't feel that fright when you kind of go through a turn because you've learned how to manage not to fall, so
or if you
just
were
being a little less afraid, having a little bit more courage.
Absolutely.
Like if you were a BMX racer or a motorcycle racer, if you get behind the wheel of a car, you're going to feel like I am bulletproof, as opposed to being out in the middle of nowhere on like a skateboard or whatever. So, yeah.
Absolutely. All about those experiences.
Okay, so you're subjected to the question for the first time, because I keep adding to these things, because our podcast can't possibly be long enough. We need to make it longer. If you could see, hear, or drive a track for the first time again, what track would it be?
If I could drive Mosport, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park again for the first time,
that's the
I
one.
would do it. I would do it differently. I'd never been to a track with that many high-speed corners before, and I don't think at that point in my driving, in my learning process, I really understood how to maximize a high-speed corner. I don't think I fundamentally thought about. I don't think I thought about where the weight is in the car and why you want to be on the throttle earlier to stabilize the car. I think I could have done a lot better. And I also was ignorant to the fact that that's a very fast, very dangerous track, which is probably good.
Yes. And you could have your Apex Pro on your dash now. So that would be awesome.
That's right. I didn't at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. So same question. It's a 3-parter. What if you could watch a movie for the first time? What movie would you want to watch again for the first time?
Probably Dumb and Dumber.
Well, since it's the first time we've ever asked this question, that's the first time we've ever had that answer. So that's okay.
That's awesome.
Okay. And then probably the hardest one of them all. What song would you want to hear again for the first time?
Oh man, that is hard. That is a really hard one. It would. I play music as well. So that definitely is something that's like I spend a lot of time thinking about music.
There's so many.
There are so many. There's such a vast array of
how about what comes to mind? So it doesn't have to be your answer for the rest of your life. You can answer it again next time you come on.
Something like something that just had a transformational sound, like I don't know, More Than a Feeling. Boston comes to mind because that Tom Schultz and his guitar tone at the time was so revolutionary, and he developed it for himself. And I don't think I knew that when I first heard it. And I would like to hear that and be like, imagine no one's ever heard this before.
So do you have one of his Rockman synthesizers? Not synthesizers, box for processing?
No, I don't. But I should get some of his gear because he made some pretty gnarly sounds.
Yeah, I think they still have them on eBay and stuff.
Yeah, I think so. I only recently learned about that. I didn't know that he developed and innovated all this music gear.
So allow me to push a prior guest, Christian James Hand. I will send you the information. He breaks down songs and he breaks them down into individual stems and tracks.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Christian James Hand, actually.
He was on our podcast earlier.
Was he really? Yeah. I heard him on the Smoking Tire podcast, and I went down the rabbit hole over the past year of listening to every single thing I could find that he's done, and it's been incredible.
It is. I have some stuff that you haven't heard, so we'll talk later.
Absolutely, I would. Let's do that.
Very well. You made it to the end.
We're here, like an endurance race.
It is.
It is. The longest. This is one of the longest.
So, Andrew, how would one contact you or follow up with you or reach out to you if they were interested.
Our website's the best place to go, apextrackcoach.com, APEXTRACKCOACH, track coach, apextrackcoach.com. And then find us on Facebook and Instagram. If you just look for Apex Pro or official Apex Pro. If you can't find us, just type Apex Pro and then anything about driving, Apex Pro Driving Coach, Apex Pro Track Coach, Apex Pro Race Car, and you'll find us. And then if you want to reach out to me, my email address is andrew@apextrackcoach.com. And I tend to be pretty good at responding. Sometimes it takes a few days, but
Well,
I'll respond.
you got to race too, you know. Can't just all work.
That's right.
So we do appreciate you coming on. We do thank you for your advice and thank you for coming on. It's helped us already, and now that we know a little bit more about it, I think it'll help us even more in the coming season. And
Well, thank you for your business. I appreciate you being a customer, and I'm happy to help anytime you guys have any questions.
oh, don't worry, we're paying. I know you'll be hearing from me at least once or twice. So we'll talk about this unit circle, friction circle soon. So, but I do appreciate it. Say thank you to everybody on your team. It's a wonderful thing. And the other thing that I haven't mentioned while we were recording was everybody that I talked to about the device says, hey, have you met Andrew yet? Or have you bumped into him at a track? Because he's like the best guy ever and knows he'll answer any question you have. So your reputation, deserved or not, is awesome. So just wanted to let you know.
I'm glad to hear that. That's what we strive for.
So you have a great night, sir. Thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Y'all enjoy the holidays.
Thank
It's
you.
coming up.
How to save money for a new super suit.
So after Andrew was on our podcast, we were talking, and he was kind enough with his team to put together a discount code. If you order an Apex Pro and you add a Apex Pro phone mount, when you put them both into the cart, if you enter the code GHIT likes Apex ! You will get the phone mount for free. That's $59. So you actually get something for listening to us for once. Once again, GHIT likes Apex ! No spaces. Thanks, Andrew.
Dominating with Dawson.
Ben Dawson, we're back again.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Super. I have
Super. Great. Wow.
I have a question for you. I know it comes as a shock when we're doing Dominating with Dawson, but I have a
Well,
question.
hit me. Let's hear it.
So there is this concept of, if I want to maximize my speed, I keep my foot flat on the floor and I keep my wheels straight.
Oh yeah. You're singing the song of my tribe.
Exactly.
Straight
However,
line driving. Don't put a turn in there. Don't put a hill in there. Don't make me slow down. Don't
however,
make me get off my cruise control. Okay.
however, these people who build the racetracks,
Oh,
they complicate things. And
all they do is slow me down and slow me down.
they do, but they do make it fun. You got to admit that.
Yeah. That's pretty fun.
Okay. So there's this concept of, you can hit the brake pedal to slow down, or you can scrub speed. Some people might not be familiar with what scrubbing speed means. So maybe we should get into that before we get too far into the discussion. What is scrubbing speed?
I mean, when I hear the term scrubbing speed, I think of just losing speed in any way that would include the brake pedal. But I understand what you mean too. You're talking about ways to lose speed that aren't just directly through the brake pedal. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
The first time I ever heard somebody talk about scrubbing speed was I was in college, and we had a chance to come up to some kind of hill climb up in the mountains of North Carolina. I'm forgetting what it was called, Beach Mountain or something like that. Maybe. Anyway, it was a big SCCA hill climb.
Okay.
And we were gonna go watch it, and somebody we knew had like a second gen Camaro with a big old, badass motor that would, huff up the mountain. It was really cool, and he was like the best driver in his class. It was kind of cool to talk to him about it. I didn't know anything about road racing at the time, but he would talk about if you go through it that way, you scrub too much speed. So I would, he would talk about his approach to up the mountain in his car in a way that would scrub the least amount of speed. And I was like, what is this about scrubbing speed? So from that moment on, at least in my mind, playing Sims and games, it was always in the back of my mind, like, how am I going to do this without scrubbing too much speed, without, with keeping the wheel straight, with keeping the throttle on, without losing too much speed that I don't need to lose. Does that make sense?
It does. So
that was my first conceptualization of it, and then it kind of bore out as I started driving. I understood, like, if you turn the wheel too hard here or turn too early, you're going to scrub too much speed that you didn't need to lose to get through this area.
So a rolling wheel has a certain amount of momentum, but it also has a certain amount of rolling resistance, which naturally scrubs speed. The wind resistance scrubs speed, so to speak. But I think when we're talking about it for racing, we're talking about directional changes of the wheel to scrub speed, because a turning wheel has more resistance than a wheel that's going straight, because it's got side and forward. And that's how typically I think we're going to talk about scrubbing speed in this discussion. So
you're talking about adding load to the tire that doesn't need to be added, that takes away from your overall speed.
Yeah, kind of a side load as opposed to just a front to back. So scrubbing speed, I think, is where you and I, we get back into where we both talk about the same thing, end up arguing about it, but then we end up saying the same thing again. So scrubbing speed is generally thought of as something you want to avoid.
Right. Yes, definitely. It's bad. You don't want to scrub speed.
However, sometimes you can use it as a tool. Or is this where we're disagreeing already?
No, you definitely can. Like, in general, the concept of scrubbing speed when you're trying to maintain speed is bad. But there are times where you're like, oh, maybe I can scrub a little speed here with the steering wheel instead of having to get in the brakes, and I can kind of keep the car going and not have to slow down as much, something like that. I mean, you're talking to the guy who I will use the painted curbs in the rain to help me rotate the car versus having to let off the gas or brake harder. So yeah, I'll use any kind of concept to change direction if it's going to work better than slowing down more. So sometimes that might be just relying on turning the wheel a little bit to help you slow down or change direction enough.
So would scrubbing speed be a way to get the car to rotate more, or am I linking two concepts?
Nope. No, you're not. You're not wrong. I definitely have thought of have used the idea of scrubbing speed, or maybe trying to use a push a little bit. Using the car when it doesn't want to turn, and instead of like fighting it, just deciding like, I know it's going to push into here, so I'm going to use that as the last part of my brake zone to help me kind of get down the apex the way I want to. I mean, there's times where you have an adverse handling situation that you just have to figure out a way to make it. You have to figure out a way to make it work and make it fast, So at least in my mind, that's what I'm talking about. We all want to be driving a car with huge wings and 1,000 horsepower and, fat, grippy tires, but we don't have that. Most of us are racing production cars that are just eat up with foibles and terrible bad habits that are just barely adapted, but maybe a sporty suspension in the cage, probably some good brakes.
Making the best of a bad situation.
Yeah, for the most part, you're going to be fighting whatever that car's fundamental characteristics were to begin with. So I'm just saying, there's a whole Mythbusters episode about whether you can or you cannot polish the excrement of animals. And it turns out that you can. It takes a little extra work and attention and care. I mean, you have to shave the hairs out of the lion poop before you can polish it, but you can polish it. I mean, you just have to make the best of what you have is what I'm saying. And in our case, it just means we're not going to be ideal. And a lot of times we're going to have to be fighting a car that's not ideal. Like the whole time I had my Miata that was on spec Miata suspension, I could never get it to be as free in the turns. It always had a push. And so I just was chronically trying to learn how to drive that car with a push and be fast with it.
Free in the turns, meaning for those playing at home?
Free in the turns means neutral to oversteerish. Like when I say free, I want a car that's always about to try to spin out on me. Like we finally got it one time with our E30, and it was terrifying for everybody else. But yeah, free in the corners means neutral to oversteerish versus the front tires plowing. Like you turn the front tires and they just plow, and you still don't change direction. You're still sort of driving the same direction. That's a push. But if you go and you turn the wheel a little bit and the butt end of the car wants to come around more than you were ready for, that's oversteer. I would always prefer a little bit of oversteer at any phase of the corner versus understeer. But the reality, at least in my experience with most of the cars that we drive, is I'm going to get more understeer than I want. So I just have to learn how to drive the car that understeers more than I want. A lot of times that involves like I'm just going to, rely heavily on just yanking on the front. I'm going to yank a bunch of steering input in a lot of times. That's my driving style. Yank a bunch of steering input in, just slam all the pressure on the front tires until they plow a little bit, and then give me something. If that doesn't work, I'll try something else and retime it. But that's usually, if I'm driving a car that's pushing, which is most of the stuff I end up driving, I'll wail on the front tires pretty heavily as far as scrubbing speed toward the end of the braking and hoping that it will pull me into the apex. Come on. Yeah, sorry, one more extension of that is when I'm thinking about doing that, I've done I've done a hard braking, and I've trail braked it in, and then I'm going to let off, usually do a brake release, and a lot of times throw a little more steering angle right at that moment, hoping that will pull me down to the apex. Even if the car's kind of pushing all the way down to that point, I'm hoping that by then, as I do the brake release and add a little more steering angle, I'm hoping that at that point it's going to accept a rotation of the way I want. It's going to pull me down to the apex.
Okay, so I think I know what you said, but I'm not sure everybody understood exactly what you said. So let me try this one more time. If I've got a car that's understeering or pushing, meaning that the front end has less grip than the rear end, so it's sliding.
Right. Yep.
If I then turn the wheel more, aren't I just going to make it worse?
If that's all you're doing, yes.
Okay, so I think we lost it.
If you've been understeering, if you're braking and you're starting your turn in and it's still understeering, and you're trail braking and it's still understeering,
yep,
that's the time where I'm hoping that at the brake release, by the time I release the brake and unweight the front, I'm hoping at that point I can throw a little more angle in, and it's going to take it because you've been sort of working off some of that understeer on the way in. That's my hope. That's usually what I'm trying to do with an understeering car. That's sort of my goal as far as working with an understeering car until I get it really settled and timed and good.
Okay, so I thought I understood what you were saying. Now I'm confused now. So I'm representing the audience because I'm confused. So if I'm coming in and it's pushing, so the front end's pushing wide, and
so
I release,
you're not getting where you're trying to get to the apex, and it's still not happening.
Right, I've got more steering input in that I'm getting out of the car, and then I release the brake. That's going to take the weight and push it backwards and take it off the front, and then I put more steering in. It sounds like I should be even worse.
I'm sorry. I'm saying this from the perspective that I know the car is going to push on the way in. So I'm braking like normal. And I'm still sort of on the way in, I'm trailing. So I'm not having a huge understeer on the way in. I just know that it's going to do that.
Okay. All right. That's where I got lost.
I'm going in with that's where we got lost. That's where we lost each other. I'm going in with the assumption that I've done a few laps in this car.
This is what it does.
It's not going to turn the way I want to. So I'm going to brake pretty hard. I'm going to trail it in. Still with some angle, it's probably going to be pushing me a little bit, but as I release the brakes, I'm hoping that unweighting the nose at that point, knowing that it's been pushing me a little bit and we're going to push on the way in and it pushed me as I was trail braking, I'm hoping that as I unweight the nose and really turn it a little more, give it a little more steering angle, that's when I'm hoping that will kind of carry me right to the apex. We're talking about a pretty close amount of space. Like we're not talking about like way back. We're talking about pretty tight timing from braking hard, trail braking, brake release, right down at the apex. Pretty close sequence of timing and space. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay, I'm with you now. So let's think of a couple other ways where we could use scrubbing speed to help us. Towards the end of a race, let's say our brakes aren't quite optimal. Either our brake fluid's hot or our brake pads are worn or tires isn't going to help.
Right, but you have less stopping power than you had. Like you're dealing with compromised stopping power at the end of the race. It's not going to get better. You just got to deal with it, right?
Right. And you just got to keep going.
Yep. But you still need to kind of stay a little bit fast because you don't have enough time to give away just 30 seconds a lap to the guys behind you.
Yeah, the race isn't done.
Yeah,
we got stuff.
That's right. So hopefully, as your brake problem has been developing, you've been figuring out like, all right, well, I used to be able to brake at the 3. Now all I can do is kind of brake at the 5. And in between there, how am I going to figure out how to still get turned down? And yeah, that's a great time to figure out how to time your steering input to, I would be thinking probably if I was trying to use a little bit less brake, I would be right down at the turn-in point, like the final turn-in point. And I would imagine I would use a little more steering input. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think you'd want to put a little bit more side load. And
just really wail on those front tires. Since you don't have brake pads, you can definitely turn the front tires pretty sideways and get them to slow you down a little bit, right?
Yep. I mean, it's not the best solution, but it is a solution. It's something to use.
We are rarely doing the best thing we can do when we're endurance racing, right? Usually endurance racing is some level of compromise. So
yeah. It's just how much and in what way.
yeah, well, we're not doing the optimal in many situations in endurance
No.
racing.
No, for sure, especially with our cars.
But that's great. That's part of the. I mean, that's why I keep showing up to play the game. This is the adaptation. Like I like
Sure.
all the different stuff you have to deal with and adapt to.
Yeah, you do the best you can before the race, and then during the race, you do what you got to do.
Just figure it out. That's a lot of fun.
Exactly. So let's go to the other case where we have a car that's running perfectly, everything's running fine. How do you avoid scrubbing speed? I know how you do it. I think I do.
What do you think first?
So you want to get your turn done as quick as possible so you can get into the gas as early as possible to pass people on the way out of the turn.
Hell yeah. I want that wheel open and I want to be back on the throttle. So yeah. So it's tough for me. Like if I can scrub a little bit of speed with the steering wheel, I'll do it. But a lot of times when you're talking about just making a minor correction, a lot of times just a dab of the brake pedal can be a little bit more exact as far as getting exactly the adjustments you want to make as far as a weight transfer. You can't. I don't think you can be as exact as you could definitely transfer weight with the steering wheel. That definitely I do it all the time. I just think you can be a little bit more precise when you do it with the brake pedal. So it depends on where I am in the phase of a turn. But if I'm just trying to lose a little bit of speed to get turned down, a lot of times I'll do it with the brake pedal because that will put the nose down exactly the way I want versus a little bit more scattershot. You're sort of shooting from the hip when you do it with the steering wheel.
Yeah, it's a multi-variable because you got forward and sideways. So what I was thinking for you is you're trying to avoid scrubbing speed because you're trying to get everything done as early as possible so that you're pointed exactly straight with no steering wheel, but no scrubbing speed, so I can pass everybody. Bye-bye.
So do I guess is the question, do I scrub speed sometimes just by whipping the wheel where I think
you do it in a short portion, as short a portion as possible to do it as little as possible everywhere else.
To me, definitely watching my own video and knowing my own priorities in driving, I would rather keep my foot on the floor and keep the throttle flat and cope with other things, but I would rather keep I want to keep it matted. If I gotta yank the wheel a few times to deal with that, I will fight it that way. But I want to keep it. Once I've committed to full throttle, I'm staying full throttle. Does that make sense? So if that involves, a lot of little corrections or yanking the wheel back and forth, I will scrub some speed just to stay committed to the throttle. Is that kind of where we're talking about in some cases, or on the way into a corner too? Like I will use scrubbing speed as a way to, I'll commit to this much braking, and then if I get headed toward the apex and it's not working, I will do some corrections to just use the wheel to lose some speed on the way to the apex. Is that part of the question too?
On the way in, I think you'll use scrubbing speed as a necessary evil, but on the way out, you will avoid it at all costs if possible.
I'll do it if I have to on the way out. But hopefully on the way out of the corner, all of us, once we've made the full commitment to throttle, whether it's gradual in a power car, if you're driving an 800 horsepower Corvette, you're not going to hit the throttle full commitment at the same point that I will in a Spec Miata. Like a Spec Miata, the throttle is a switch.
Yep.
So we're not all doing it the same way, but once you have got your foot all the way down, I think one of the worst things you can do in road racing is come off.
Yep.
Don't come back off the throttle. Don't do a pedal fest off the corner. You might as well have not. You might as well have hit the throttle a couple seconds later and not had that adverse effect, and you'd probably be faster. So that's what I think. I think it's important to make the commitment to the throttle, and if I've hit it too soon, then I'll have to correct with the steering wheel, correct with car placement or something like that. But I'm not coming back off the gas.
So we're making a reference to a prior early Dominating with Dawson. We do not all drive like Ayrton Senna does. Because that man stayed off and on the throttle like it was just, he was Thumper from
crazy.
Bambi.
I mean, and that's not to say that I won't get if things are bad, I'll get into pop, and
but you don't want
slapping
to
at the gas. But yeah, that for me, if you ever see me driving and I'm doing that, usually the commentary inside the helmet is not like, look how fast I am. This is going great. It's the
Everything went
opposite.
as I wanted.
This is going so well. This is swimmingly. Yes, great. Now, like I'm usually pretty unhappy about it if I'm having to kind of do a pedal fest. But also, I say that to say, like, I mean, the driving style where you are driving in such a metered fashion that, like, all right, when I hit the gas, I'm going to stay on it. I know I'm good. You might be kind of slow unless you're having to fight it out of the corner. Like, you should be hitting the gas, and it should be a little bit of a struggle. It should be a little bit violent if you're going to be fast. So just something to think about and something to work up to. If you're nailing the gas and you're like, that felt great. It just pushed me because I'm just rolled right out to the corner exit and everything felt perfect. You might not be going fast enough. But I also don't think there's much value to the old wisdom of that. If you never go off track, you're not going fast enough. But I think if you feel like you're in supreme control, you're probably not going fast enough either.
Or there's more to be had.
Yeah, I don't think you need to go drive your car off the track just to prove that you're really trying hard, because I don't think there's any value to that. But also, you should understand when you're at the edge of the limit. You should hear the tires talking to you and that sort of thing. So be objective about your own driving. I wasn't for a long time, and it was holding me back. So I'm glad I finally put a timer in my car and realized that I needed to make those tires scream a little bit.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that I remember was one of my first HPDs. I was in HPD 1. I had a really good teacher named Chris, who shall remain named because I just named him.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris. And we were on Pittsburgh pit race, and I was exiting the turn onto the back straight at Pittsburgh. And he's like, you need to track all the way out. And I'm like, but I don't need to. I would just be doing it because I want to be on the line. I didn't need all that track. And looking back on it as I got better, that was indicative of there was more to be had in that turn. And I should have been almost, use the word, forced by the trajectory, speed, and traction of my car all the way out. And it was indicating that I wasn't doing what I could have done. The line wasn't just something to geometrically follow. It was something that the momentum and physics of the car should almost make you follow.
Right. The line is where you should end up being forced to go once you're driving the car at the limit. And it's not 100% the same for every car, but it's generally pretty close to the same.
Plus or minus, yeah.
Yep.
So that, to me, was an indication, and it proved to be accurate, that there was more to be had from that car.
Yeah, more grip to be used, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you're seeing that and you're on an HPDE, especially if you're early in your HPDE career or learning how to drive on a track, and you think that, hey, I don't need to use all the track, that's probably an indication that there's more for you to learn.
And when you think about the concept of scrubbing speed, at some point, I think hopefully at some point in your driving, you'll be able to use scrubbing speed as like a pop-off valve on a turbo. Like, well, this is too much. I'm just going to I'm going to throw I'm going to do a few steering corrections here and just lose some speed without having to get off the gas. It's not for everybody, but it's definitely one of my crutches in my own driving. Is like, just this is going to allow me to stay on full throttle, and I'll just kind of eat the pace with the steering wheel. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think it's not the first thing you're going to try, but it's good to know that you could use it when you need it.
Yes, you want to know how to do it. At least in my opinion, you want to know how to do it, and you want to have it on tap every second you're on the track. Because at least for me, I'm a go hard. Like, I always want to try to hit it a little bit harder than I think I could get away with, and then just cope with the results. And once you kind of get dialed in, you don't have to keep doing that. But at least for me, for a while, I'm going to kind of try a little more than I think I can get away with, and I'll just kind of cope with the after effects with little corrections. That's what's always at the back of my mind.
Yep, but at the same time, I don't think you're telling somebody who's relatively new to do that because they're overstepping their limit. They don't know how much it is.
That's like something you do if you've been doing this for a long time. Like, I've been doing this for a long time, and I kind of know kind of the BS I can get away with. But if you're new to it, work your way up to it, I think.
And your oversteps aren't, if this corner I can do 100, I'm going to try 110. Yours is much smaller.
I'm trying. I'm a habitual line stepper.
Yep.
But it's pretty small steps.
Yeah. So the increments that Ben is talking about, where he goes over the line, he's not in the next county. He's just over the line. So,
we're talking about a couple feet here and there.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I think we've scrubbed enough speed on this one.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
All right.